points to clarify what we're going to talk about. So to start off with, we're just going to kind of go through what the case was about. Everyone knows what the case was about, but the complaint itself was submitted to us to just kind of walk through how we went through and decided to make our decision. We accepted the evidence and heard the complaints from both sides, and then based on the bylaws, we looked at it, and it does give judicial authority to the Justice Department, Judicial Board, to interpret the bylaws and then rule on them in accordance with the bylaws. A lot of things have been brought up since then about substantial impact on the elections, and all I want to say about that is that we reviewed the day's votes, and we observed that it did have a substantial impact based on the third day alone. So that, among the fact that we felt that was unfair to present that, decided we had a substantial impact, and that's why we made our ruling to invalidate the election. Now, since then, we want to make some clarification on what we are invalidating in the election. We're invalidating the presidential ticket election. We are not invalidating the senatorial election, so those will still stand. Also in the decision, it was listed that we listed the charges, and we listed the Winters-Ramos ticket as violating the bylaws, but we listed also that they were allowed what they did based on their request to the Elections Board. So part of this meeting today is to give a verbal warning to both the Elections Board and to the Winters-Ramos ticket for violating those bylaws, for establishing a polling site by having a table and a computer to allow voting there. And then additionally, in the decision, it was listed that no campaigning would be allowed for the next election. And upon reading the other bylaw that tells you if the presidential and the vice presidential ticket are vacant, then the Senate will call an election. I understand the Senate has called an election, and based on that and the fact that we want a large amount of turnout to be at the elections, and we don't want the low population of the students voting to have a large impact on the special election circumstance. So we are going to allow campaigning for the special election. I just want to say we are constrained by the bylaws and the Constitution, and everything we did up to this point was in accordance with the bylaws and Constitution, and it was a thorough decision process. None of the decisions were made quickly. They were tedious, double-checking our words and double-checking the interpretation amongst the group, as well as bringing in our advisor, and then we had another meeting with the student affairs. And we took all of that input in making this decision. None of it was made quickly or lightly. We understand it's a large impact on the whole student body, and we do respect the voice of the student body. That is what this whole thing is about, is we want the student voice to be heard in a fair and a reasonable way, in a fair and a reasonable election. And that mostly summarizes everything I wanted to talk about personally in this meeting today. I do want to leave it open that if we have any questions, we can have questions asked and I can respond to those. But aside from that, I'd like to open the floor. Yes?
We now want another $800 budget or limit for campaigning, or
that's a question for the election board.
That's true.
sorry.
Yeah.
No.
We aren't establishing the new special election. That was called by the Senate. The Senate gives the power to the election board to run the election.
Thank you.
Yes. Are there any other questions? All right. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate your time and coming and listening to this meeting.